The alien fleet, vast and menacing, hovered above the target planet, its warships blocking out the stars. The commanders aboard each ship mocked the tiny fleet of ships drifting toward them, insignificant specks in the grand expanse of space. These vessels were nothing more than the remnants of a long-forgotten race, discarded and dismissed by galactic powers. The aliens had seen it all before, time and again, weak, aging fleets desperate to prove themselves. As they laughed, they underestimated what was coming. They saw the ships as old, outdated, easily destroyed by their advanced technology. They made bets on how long it would take to wipe them out. A few minutes, at most. They didn't see the humans on board, they didn't know who they were up against. No one had ever dared to defy them in such a direct way before. The fleet, barely more than a dozen ships, had been written off by galactic commanders. They were supposed to be nothing. Just a distraction in a universe that had already moved past them. Their presence meant nothing, until now. The first shots fired from the alien ships sliced through the void. But instead of simply vanishing into the vastness, the human ships moved in ways no one had expected. They were smaller, yes, but they weren't slow. They weren't weak. Explosions lit up the stars as the human fleet engaged with deadly precision. The aliens looked on in disbelief. Each shot from the human ships hit its mark, each maneuver was planned to perfection. Their tiny fleet had a speed, an unpredictability, and an intelligence that the aliens had never encountered before. For the first time, the aliens began to feel the unease that they had so often inflicted on others. This wasn't what they had expected. This wasn't what they had prepared for. As the battle continued, the alien fleet found itself struggling, unable to counter the humans' tactics. The tiny ships danced between the larger warships, exploiting every gap, every vulnerability. The humans were too agile, too smart. They had turned their fleet into a weapon of precision, something the aliens were not ready for. And then it happened, the first strike that changed everything. A shot from the human fleet tore through the shields of the flagship, sending it spiraling into chaos. The aliens panicked. They hadn't planned for this. They hadn't planned for the humans at all. The human fleet's success was nothing short of miraculous. What had started as a joke, a tiny, insignificant fleet, had now become a symbol of defiance. As the alien flagship drifted, its systems overloaded from the devastating strike, it was clear that the humans were more than they had appeared. The galaxy had underestimated them for far too long. As the dust settled in space, aboard one of the remaining human ships, Captain Alina Kirov stood at the command center, her face lit by the glow of the tactical displays. Her crew, a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh recruits, watched her every move. The tension was thick in the air, but Alina remained calm, her mind sharp and focused. This moment, this victory, was not just a result of luck, it was a culmination of years of planning, hard work, and sacrifice. The human fleet had once been the laughingstock of the galaxy. Decades ago, they had been forced into hiding after their home planet, Earth, had been destroyed in an intergalactic war. The remnants of humanity had scattered to the far corners of the galaxy, with only a few fleets left to protect the survivors. But those fleets had grown stronger, smarter, and more determined than anyone could have ever imagined. The aliens, arrogant in their belief that they ruled the stars, had never seen it coming. Their mockery had only fueled humanity's resolve. They had built ships using the scraps of war, retrofitting old technology with new innovations. These ships, though small, were equipped with cutting-edge weapons and stealth technology that allowed them to fight in ways the larger alien ship simply couldn't match. Alina glanced at the display as another alien warship moved in to engage. Her mind raced through the calculations, assessing the best strategy. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Prepare to engage," she ordered. Her voice was steady, but her heart raced. They weren't out of danger yet, and the true battle had just begun. The human fleet had only one goal: to reclaim their place in the galaxy. They would not be the forgotten race. They would no longer be laughed at. They had a history of ingenuity, of survival, and now, they would show the aliens exactly what that meant. As they continued their assault, Captain Kirov couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The ships under her command, the small fleet that had once been deemed irrelevant, were now the most powerful force in the galaxy. But she knew better than anyone that the fight was far from over. The alien forces would retaliate with everything they had. And when they did, they would learn just how terrifying humanity could be. Back in the alien command center, the generals and warlords scrambled, their arrogance quickly turning to fear. They had never thought that this small fleet, which they had dismissed so easily, would become the thing that would threaten their entire empire. The commanders who had laughed earlier now stared at their screens in disbelief. The tiny ships that had been so easily dismissed were now tearing through their forces. And as they scrambled to regroup, one thing became clear: they had no idea what kind of enemy they were truly facing. The shockwave from the human fleet's sudden attack rippled across the galactic battlefield. The alien commanders, who once held unwavering confidence, now found themselves on the defensive. Every strategy they had relied on was failing in the face of the humans' unexpected brilliance. What had been dismissed as a mere nuisance had transformed into the most formidable threat they'd encountered in centuries. In the depths of the alien command ship, General Veltra of the Zalorian Empire gripped the edge of his console. His face, once filled with arrogance, was now twisted with confusion and anger. His fleet, far larger and technologically advanced, was being outmaneuvered by the small, agile human ships. He could see it now: every move the humans made seemed deliberate, calculated, and purposeful. Their strategy was elegant, and every action was one step ahead of him. It was as though they had studied every weakness in the Zalorian fleet and had a perfect counter for each. Veltra was not one to panic, but this was unlike anything he had experienced before. The humans, with their limited resources, had turned their perceived disadvantage into their greatest strength. They didn't need overwhelming firepower, they had something far more valuable: ingenuity. It was their unpredictable nature that had made them so dangerous. Back aboard Captain Kirov's flagship, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. The crew worked tirelessly, following Alina's every command as they danced through space, weaving in and out of the Zalorian ships with an agility that was impossible for the enemy to match. The human fleet's tactics were simple but effective. Hit hard, hit fast, and don't stay in one place for too long. Each ship had its role, from long-range support to close-quarters combat, and each crew member knew exactly what to do. Alina studied the alien fleet's movements carefully. Their arrogance had caused them to make one fatal mistake: they had underestimated the humans' ability to adapt. The alien ships, despite their size and firepower, were sluggish compared to the human vessels. Each time the aliens launched an attack, the humans countered with a swift, precise strike, exploiting every weakness they could find. Then, a new signal blared across the communications panel. A massive, heavily armed Zalorian cruiser had broken through their lines, barreling toward the human flagship. Its shields were raised, and its weapons were primed. It was the kind of ship that could crush smaller vessels without breaking a sweat. If it got any closer, it would obliterate their fleet. "Captain, they're coming straight for us," reported Lieutenant Gregor, his voice laced with concern. Alina's gaze remained fixed on the screen, her mind calculating the best course of action. Time was running out. The cruiser was too powerful to engage head-on, and retreat wasn't an option. There was only one thing left to do. "Prepare a full evasive maneuver," she ordered, her voice unwavering. "We'll use their own weight against them." The crew sprang into action, each movement precise and fluid. They had practiced this moment for months, preparing for the possibility that the alien fleet would adapt and retaliate. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but the humans had something the Zalorians didn't: determination. As the human flagship accelerated, Captain Kirov gave the order to unleash their hidden weapon, a fleet-wide electromagnetic pulse that would disrupt the Zalorian cruiser's shield system, rendering it vulnerable for a brief but crucial moment. The tension in the command room was palpable as the human ship closed the distance. Every crew member knew what was at stake. With a single, synchronized pulse, the human fleet struck. The Zalorian cruiser's shields flickered, destabilizing under the sudden surge of energy. For a fraction of a second, it was exposed, vulnerable. The human fleet didn't hesitate. They unleashed a barrage of concentrated fire, targeting the cruiser's weak points. The shots landed with surgical precision, and the alien ship's massive hull began to crack and split apart. The battle was far from over, but that moment marked a significant turning point. The Zalorian fleet had been forced to acknowledge something they had never considered before: the humans weren't just a nuisance. They were a force to be reckoned with. Alina watched as the cruiser's final moments unfolded on the display. It was a victory, but only a small one in the grand scheme of things. There was still much to do. The Zalorian Empire wasn't going to fall without a fight, and the humans had to remain vigilant. Yet, despite the odds, there was one thing the aliens had failed to account for: the human will to survive. And as the human fleet pressed on, they were about to show the galaxy just how terrifying that will could be. The battle raged on, and with each passing moment, the gap between the humans and the Zalorians seemed to grow. The humans had struck a significant blow, but the alien fleet wasn't retreating. Instead, they were regrouping, readying for a counterattack. Captain Kirov knew that the real test was just beginning. The first victory had only served to provoke the Zalorians into a more ruthless pursuit. The human fleet had become a thorn in the Zalorian side, and now they were determined to crush it. Yet, they were not prepared for what the humans had planned next. Alina walked across the command deck, her mind sharp. She was a seasoned leader, but this situation was unlike any she had faced before. The human fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and yet they had already shown more resilience than the Zalorians had ever imagined. Every moment they stayed in the fight chipped away at the aliens' confidence. The humans were proving that even the smallest of forces could make the greatest of impacts. "We need to keep them guessing," Alina said aloud, her voice steady despite the tension. "We can't allow them to predict our next move." Her officers nodded, their expressions grim but determined. They knew the odds were stacked against them. Every tactical decision had to be perfect, every maneuver had to count. One misstep, and they could lose everything. Yet, in their hearts, there was no doubt: they would fight until the very end. The Zalorians had a simple strategy: they outnumbered the humans, and their ships were faster and stronger. They had the advantage in raw firepower. But where they faltered was in their overconfidence. The Zalorians expected the humans to break under pressure, to fall apart when faced with overwhelming force. What they failed to realize was that the humans were not built to fold. They were built to adapt. Alina issued the order, and the human fleet split into multiple smaller groups. The strategy was risky. By dividing their forces, they weakened their overall strength. But it was their only chance to keep the Zalorians off balance. If the aliens couldn't focus their fire on one target, they wouldn't be able to bring their full strength to bear. At the same time, the humans deployed their secret weapon, a new cloaking system that had been in development for months. It was experimental, untested in combat, but if it worked, it would give them the edge they desperately needed. The cloaking system allowed the human ships to become nearly invisible to the alien sensors, making them ghostly figures in the vastness of space. It was a gamble, but a necessary one. The human fleet scattered, each group using the cover of the cloaking system to outmaneuver the Zalorians. For the first time in the battle, the alien fleet was truly on the defensive. They fired blindly, unable to track the human ships. The once proud invaders had become the hunted. But the Zalorians weren't out of tricks yet. In a final, desperate attempt to regain control, they launched a full-scale offensive, hurling everything they had at the now-split human fleet. The pressure was immense. Alina could feel the tension building in her chest as the battle intensified. "Stay calm, everyone," she ordered, though the fear crept into her own voice. "We've prepared for this. Stick to the plan." The human ships darted in and out of the chaos, each group attacking from a different angle. With every strike, the Zalorians grew more desperate. The once mighty fleet that had mocked the humans now found themselves losing ships, retreating to form a new, protective formation. The balance of power had shifted. The Zalorians were no longer the predators, they were the prey. But even as the battle reached its peak, Captain Kirov couldn't afford to celebrate. The Zalorians were powerful, and their fleet was far from being wiped out. The human fleet had made significant progress, but the fight wasn't over. The enemy was regrouping, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. Alina's mind raced. There had to be a way to end this, before the Zalorians figured out a countermeasure to the humans' tactics. She knew they had to hit hard, hit fast, and make sure they didn't give the aliens a chance to recover. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "If we can cripple their leadership, they'll fall apart." The decision was made. The final phase of the plan was set into motion. As the human ships closed in on the alien command ship, the battle reached a fever pitch. Everything was on the line now. The fate of humanity, the future of their fleet, and their survival depended on this one final push. Alina could feel the weight of it all bearing down on her shoulders. One mistake now, and it was all over. The human fleet, fueled by determination and a single-minded goal, surged toward the heart of the alien stronghold. The alien command ship, massive and heavily shielded, loomed ahead like a fortress in space. Its weapons were primed, and its remaining fleet stood in a tight formation, prepared to defend it at all costs. But this time, the Zalorians weren't prepared for the kind of fight the humans were bringing. As the human ships moved into position, Captain Kirov surveyed the battlefield from the command deck. The decision to target the alien command ship had been bold, but it was the only way to bring the Zalorians to their knees. With their leadership crippled, the remaining alien forces would fall apart. But the path to victory would not be easy. The command ship's shields were strong, and its weaponry devastating. It was going to take everything they had to break through. "Prepare to engage," Alina ordered, her voice steady, though her mind raced with calculations. "Stay close and keep their fire off each other. If we lose one ship, we lose everything." The tension on the deck was thick. The crew worked with machine-like precision, following Alina's every command without hesitation. Every second mattered. The Zalorian fleet was desperately trying to form a defense, but the humans' precision and agility were winning the day. Every human ship darted around the larger alien warships, firing calculated bursts of energy, creating chaos in the enemy's ranks. The human ships, using the advantage of their cloaking technology, slipped in and out of sight, making it almost impossible for the Zalorians to target them effectively. The alien ships tried to adjust their targeting systems, but the humans were already closing in on their command ship. The battle had become a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the Zalorians finding themselves playing the role of the prey. As the human fleet surrounded the command ship, Alina gave the signal to engage. The cloaking systems were disengaged, and the full force of the human assault was unleashed. The alien command ship's shields flared as the first wave of fire impacted them, but the humans kept up the barrage, refusing to let up. Each shot was aimed at the weak points of the ship, exploiting every vulnerability they could find. The Zalorians responded with desperation, launching counterattacks in every direction. Their ships fired relentlessly, but the humans were ready. With every barrage, the alien fleet's lines grew more disorganized. The humans' ability to move quickly and strike unexpectedly had left the Zalorians floundering. But despite the overwhelming odds, the alien command ship still wasn't falling. The shields held strong, and their weapons continued to strike with deadly precision. Captain Kirov's eyes narrowed as she watched the battle unfold on her screens. It was clear that this was going to be a much longer fight than she had hoped. "Engage the secondary weapon systems," Alina ordered, knowing it was their last resort. The human fleet had developed a new, experimental weapon, one that had never been used in actual combat. It was a dangerous choice, but if it worked, it could turn the tide. The weapon, a gravity disruptor, was designed to destabilize the gravitational field around a target, causing its structure to collapse under its own weight. The concept was still untested in battle, and there was no guarantee it would even work. But it was their only chance to pierce the command ship's powerful shields. Alina held her breath as the weapon powered up, her fingers lightly tapping against the console in front of her. The gravity disruptor hummed to life, sending a pulse of energy toward the alien command ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the space around the Zalorian flagship began to warp. The ship's shields flickered, and a ripple of distortion spread outward. The alien ship's structure groaned, its massive hull starting to buckle under the pressure. The Zalorians attempted to counter the gravity disruption, but it was too late. The destabilizing forces had already taken hold. The command ship's hull cracked open like a fragile egg, its once impenetrable shields collapsing in on themselves. In the span of a few moments, the mighty flagship was no more. It exploded in a burst of light, sending debris scattering in all directions. The Zalorians were stunned. The humans had done it. Against all odds, they had crippled the alien command ship, sending shockwaves through the rest of the alien fleet. Panic spread among the remaining forces, and their once coordinated attacks turned into disorganized chaos. It was clear that the loss of their flagship was a crushing blow from which they might never recover. Alina's heart raced as she watched the destruction unfold. It had worked. The gravity disruptor had been a success. But there was no time to celebrate. The battle wasn't over yet. The human fleet had struck a major blow, but the Zalorians still had a formidable force remaining. They were regrouping, and the fight for the galaxy's future was far from decided. "Keep up the pressure," Alina commanded, her voice resolute. "We've come this far, and we won't stop now." The battle was nearing its climax. The human fleet had proven itself capable of so much more than the galaxy had ever thought possible. They had shown the universe that even the smallest force, when driven by determination and innovation, could change the course of history. The battle seemed to stretch on forever, but each passing moment marked a decisive shift in favor of the human fleet. The destruction of the alien command ship had sent shockwaves through the Zalorian forces. The once proud fleet, made up of towering warships and advanced technology, was now in disarray. But Captain Kirov knew better than to believe the fight was over. The Zalorians, despite their desperation, were not the type to retreat without a final, devastating effort. The human fleet pressed forward, capitalizing on the chaos their gravity disruptor had caused. They continued to strike with precision, picking apart the remaining enemy ships one by one. The Zalorians, in their panic, tried to regroup, their ships moving erratically in an attempt to re-establish some semblance of order. But every move they made seemed to be a misstep, and the humans capitalized on each opportunity. "We have them on the run," Lieutenant Gregor said, his voice tight with excitement. "They're starting to break apart, Captain. They can't keep this up." Alina, however, remained focused, her eyes scanning the tactical displays. She had been through too many battles to be fooled by early signs of victory. The Zalorians had not fought this hard just to give up now. She knew they would come at them with everything they had left, and the human fleet had to be ready. "Stay alert," she commanded. "They're preparing something. We can't let our guard down." Just as Alina spoke, a massive surge of energy flared from the Zalorian fleet. A new wave of enemy ships, larger and more heavily armed than anything they had faced yet, appeared on the horizon. It was a last-ditch effort, one final strike to destroy the humans once and for all. The human ships immediately began to take evasive maneuvers, but the new enemy force was relentless. The Zalorians, recognizing that they had little time left, had pooled all their remaining strength into this final assault. They had unleashed their most advanced weapons, the kind that could tear through fleets with ease. The battle had now reached a critical point. One mistake, one misstep, and the humans could be wiped out. Alina's heart raced as the onslaught began. The human ships, despite their ingenuity, were now facing weapons far beyond their capacity to defend. Massive energy beams shot toward them, cutting through the void. The human fleet returned fire, but the overwhelming force of the Zalorian weapons threatened to overwhelm them. For the first time in this battle, Alina felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. It wasn't just the fate of the fleet at stake anymore, it was the future of humanity itself. "Give them everything we've got," Alina ordered. "This is it. We make our stand here." With a final surge of energy, the human fleet launched their most powerful attack yet. It was a gamble, an all-or-nothing maneuver. Every ship fired simultaneously, focusing all their remaining power on the incoming Zalorian fleet. The combined blast of energy erupted into the void, colliding with the alien forces in an explosion of light and sound that shook the very fabric of space. For a brief moment, it seemed as though time had stopped. The Zalorian ships, once so confident and powerful, were now caught in the blast, their shields failing one by one. The force of the human assault was too much. The alien ships were torn apart, their technology unable to withstand the raw, unrelenting power of humanity's final push. As the light from the explosion faded, Alina held her breath. The battle was over, and the silence that followed was deafening. One by one, the alien ships began to fall, their engines sputtering and their weapons going silent. The once mighty Zalorian fleet had been broken, defeated by a force they had never expected to encounter. The humans, with their tiny fleet and their unyielding spirit, had won. "Report," Alina said, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. "Sir, the enemy fleet has been neutralized," Gregor responded, his voice filled with disbelief. "We did it. We actually did it." Alina allowed herself a moment of relief, but only a moment. This victory was hard-earned, and there was no time to waste. They had done the impossible, but the war was far from over. The galaxy had just witnessed the rise of humanity. And the Zalorians would not be the last to underestimate them. The human fleet had proven that size didn't matter. What mattered was heart, will, and the drive to survive. They had fought not just for victory, but for their place in the stars. As the remnants of the alien fleet drifted into the void, Captain Kirov stood tall, her eyes fixed on the future. This was only the beginning. The aftermath of the battle was quiet, almost eerie. The stars above seemed to shimmer with a new kind of brightness, as though the universe itself was reflecting the change that had just occurred. The Zalorian fleet, once so powerful and feared, was no more. In its place, a quiet victory sat heavy on the shoulders of the human fleet. The weight of the accomplishment was undeniable, but it was also clear to Captain Alina Kirov and her crew that this victory was not just about defeating a powerful enemy, it was a statement. A statement to the galaxy that humanity, the most underestimated race in the universe, had arrived. Alina sat in the quiet of her command room, her fingers tracing the surface of the tactical console. The fleet had been battered, but they had held together. The fight had cost them, but it had also forged them into something stronger. They had proven their place in the galaxy. "What now, Captain?" Lieutenant Gregor's voice cut through the silence, his words careful, almost hesitant. "What happens next for us?" Alina didn't answer immediately. The future was uncertain, and while the victory over the Zalorians was significant, there were still countless challenges ahead. Humanity had earned its place on the galactic stage, but that didn't mean they were safe. The universe was vast, and it would not forget this confrontation. "We rebuild," she said finally, her voice firm. "We don't stop here. We make sure that the galaxy understands who we are. They thought we were insignificant. But look at what we've done. Now they know. We are not to be ignored. Not anymore." Her words carried weight, powerful, unshakable. The message had been sent, and it had been heard. The Zolorians had learned the hard way that humans were not to be underestimated. And the rest of the galaxy would soon understand that lesson, too. As the crew went about the task of securing the battlefield and salvaging what they could from the wreckage, Alina couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. It had been a long road filled with setbacks, hardships, and struggles. They had faced a galaxy that had treated them as insignificant. But in the end, it was that very underestimation that had fueled their determination. Humans had always been resilient, innovative, and resourceful. They had adapted when others would have given up. They had learned from their mistakes, and with every battle, they had grown stronger. It was that unwavering spirit that had led them to this victory, and it was that same spirit that would carry them into the future. This victory wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about proving a point. Humans were more than survivors. They were conquerors. And the rest of the galaxy would soon learn that if you dared to underestimate them, you would pay the price. Alina turned her gaze toward the stars. The vastness of space, once so intimidating, now felt like an open road, one that humanity would chart for themselves. The fight wasn't over. The galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of, and there were countless challenges ahead. But the lesson had been learned. Humans had the power to change the course of history. The universe was no longer a place where humans had to hide in the shadows. They had proven their strength, their courage, and their ingenuity. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with them. "Prepare for the next phase," Alina said, her voice resolute. "The battle is won, but the war is just beginning. And we will be ready." As the human fleet prepared to move forward, the lesson of the day was clear to all who had witnessed it: never underestimate the small, never underestimate the weak. The human spirit, fueled by hope, ingenuity, and unwavering determination, had proven that even the tiniest of fleets could bring down the most powerful of foes. And in the vastness of the universe, that spirit would continue to shine, bright and unyielding, no matter the odds.